Once again, a beautiful morning to you, Africa, and welcome to Breakfast Headlines on News Central Television with me, Blessings Mosugu. And let's start in West Africa, where Sierra Leone's President, Julius Maada Bio, has been declared the winner of Saturday's presidential election. Now, this was announced by the head of the Electoral Commission on Tuesday, following a process disputed by the opposition. According to final results announced in Freetown by Commission Chief Mohamed Kenewi Kone, Bio was re-elected with 56.17% to serve a second term. His main challenger, Samura Kamara, came second with 41.16% of the vote.
I hereby certify that Bio Julius Maada, having polled 1,566,932 of the valid vote cast, representing 56.17% of the total valid vote cast in the 24th June 2023 presidential election, duly elected President of the Republic.
Still staying in West Africa, the United Nations plans to end its decade-long peacekeeping mission in Mali on the 30th of June and will withdraw all personnel within 6 months. This is according to a draft Security Council resolution proposed by France. The withdrawal of the 13,000-strong mission known as MINUSMA would come after years of tensions between the UN and Mali's military junta came to a head this month when Mali's Foreign Minister Abdoulaye Diop asked the force to leave without delay. It would mean an abrupt halt to a mission that has been hobbled by government restrictions since Mali teamed up with Russia's Wagner mercenary group in 2021. We're now in Nigeria, where President Bola Tinubu has returned to Lagos from his international trips to Paris and London, respectively. The president on Tuesday arrived at the Murtala Mohammed International Airport in Lagos at exactly 5:13 p.m. local time. Tinubu was received by supporters and high-ranking members of the ruling All Progressives Congress, the APC, including Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu of Lagos State, amid warm display by colorful members of the Presidential Guards. The president had traveled to the Paris, France on Friday, during where he participated in the Summit for a New Global Financing Pact hosted by French President Emmanuel Macron. According to his spokesman, Dele Alake, after the two-day summit, the president proceeded to London, United Kingdom, for a short private visit. Tragedy was averted on Tuesday afternoon in Lagos, Nigeria, after a vehicle caught fire on the third mainland bridge. The car, which was identified to be a 2017 Volvo model, was burned to ashes in what was suspected to be electrical malfunction. According to eyewitnesses, men of a state fire service arrived at the scene almost immediately to avert further crisis and quickly put out the fire. The car, which was said to be worth almost 30 million naira, was reportedly newly imported and was about to be delivered to its owner by the mechanic that had taken it for repairs. Now, the auto mechanic who also drove the car was rescued by passers-by after he attempted to jump into the Lagos Lagoon out of shock.
This car is owned by a customer of my friend who is a mechanic. So actually, he has not finished the job on it. Why the person that owns the car said he's very close to he's back in the country, that he is sending the driver to come and pick it up. And the mechanic insisted, he said, the work is not done yet, that let him just finish the work. And the owners insisted that he should bring the car to him for him to pick it up at the airport. So on his way down to this place, this was when it occurs. They are both in the car, while even the mechanic himself almost jumped to the river here because of what happened, because that is not his fault. You know, when something happened unexpectedly, so he nearly wanted to jump to the lagoon because he didn't know any explanation to give to the owner, or to tell him that the car you tell him to bring has burnt due to it has not finished up the job, which I'm still stating this. The owner insisted that he should bring the car to him to the airport, which he told him that this car is not finished yet.
It's a very touching one there. Let's bring back Olive Andosauge. What do you think about it? I mean, of course, thankful for life, but that kind of debt is not something someone wants to incur.
It's just really a sad and an unfortunate scenario there.
Yeah.
But, I mean, that's not the first time we've seen like accidents happening on Third Mainland Bridge. The response squad, I think, once again, this just highlights how much we need to put in more work in terms of like ensuring that our roads are in good condition, ensuring that we speed up our game, we level up our game in terms of averting disaster.
But I mean, it's unfortunate for him. I saw that he was totally distraught, in that video. And one more thing, is every now and then these things happen. You can never plan, against these things. You can have a good fire extinguisher, you can have all the safety, apparel that is needed, but sometimes it's just, it's just going to happen, and there's nothing you can do about it. I normally would say, where is the Lagos State Fire Service? Where is, some of all of that? But this is not even the place for it.
Maybe another conversation that this then highlights is the importance to have insurance.
It's just unfortunate. Yes, insurance, would have been, a good thing to mention in this situation. But I
really feel for him, because it's not his car. It's a new car. The owner hasn't even seen it. And according to what they said, he told the owner that the car wasn't ready, but they insisted to have it delivered. And I can't imagine what he would have been going through at that moment.
Yeah, well, it's life.
So it's now to find out who does the onus lie on, to sort of compensate. Should it be that the owner is taking, the delivery is complete upon receiving the item, I would hope. So in this case, I'm hoping that they have insurance, some level of insurance to cover this damage. And
also, if we were in a different climate, we probably would be looking at the car company to find out why your car caught, fire. But Lagos, nobody would answer you in that.
With the 40% increase on import duties, exactly. I wonder what that would.
I was just going to mention, just before we move on, take the newspapers, that the president's visit to France and then to London, which was a private visit. I remember that it got some criticism because it was, the private visit was done with Nigeria's taxpayers' money, with the presidential jet and all of that, which a lot of people argued shouldn't be so. And then he arrived yesterday at the Lagos airport, and saw people going to the airport to welcome him. And I'm really just thinking that shouldn't we be done with that type of attitude? Why do we have people in government, ministers, appointed people in government going to stand at the airport to welcome the president? Why do we still do that? And one of the people who was there yesterday in Lagos to welcome him was Nuhu Ribadu, the new NSA. Both of you have your offices are in Abuja. Why are you going to Lagos to welcome him? It just doesn't make sense.
In summary of that, I just think that a lot of things we do is highly merged with culture. So because we take certain things too seriously, well, you know what? This is a conversation that we would have much later. Thank you so much, Blessings. We'll see you again at 8 a.m.
Thank you.
All right. We have the newspapers to go through this morning around the continent, what the biggest stories that made it to the front page are saying.
All right. We start on the front page of the front page in Liberia this morning. It says, why Bill won? If you've been following the Sierra Leonean elections, of course, he was declared winner yesterday. It says Sierra Leone implications for Liberia's October presidential elections. And also this morning on the front page,
it's not really surprising. To be honest, it's not surprising that he won. He's the incumbent. It's very hard. I think that once you're already in the seat of office, it's easier for you to move around influence and resources in your favor.
Yeah. It says the Sierra Leonean People's Party, SLPP, emerged victorious in the election, securing nearly 1.6 million votes, which accounted for 56.1% of the total ballots cast.
I was going to say APC is thriving in Nigeria, but not in Sierra Leone.
But it's all people's.
Yeah, but it's all APC.
Yeah,
APC.
Still APC.
Yeah.
All right. Other stories on the front page this morning, very few of them. Compromising academic excellence at law school. There's an article you could read. And also raising CSOs' voices. USAID donates nearly $1.5 million to advocate for policy reforms in health, education, and governance sectors. And the final story this morning is Gongloi picks running mate, selects Bong County District 4 aspirant Dr. Emmanuel Yakpawolo as vice standard bearer. These are the stories that we can share on the front page. Let's go to Kenya this morning and see what's on the Daily Nation.
All right, here in the east of the continent, the big story says Raila leads Azimio in tax boycott push. That's, of course, on the Daily Nation in Kenya. Raila leads Azimio in tax boycott push. Politics, we have the Azimio pulls out of ongoing bipartisan talks, calls for another rally on July 7th. That's the front page of the Daily Nation in Kenya. We also have here, blow to parents as media school transfers banned. Oh, really? We have the 3,000 schools that had not acknowledged receipt of last year's disbursement of capitation funds as at January this year. Then we have at the side of the paper, Kenyans buy more than 80% of the food they eat, says report. Talking about Kenya, this is of course a report by Kenya Poverty Report. Debts, 641 billion shillings pending bills to be audited as team gets cabinet go ahead. MPs mull off new rules for independent power producers. And they're talking about nurturing, this is the Parenting Corner, talks about nurturing patriotism. I can't wait to see what's happening. Right, we're seeing that Raila Odinga is leading Azimio in tax boycott push, and that there's another rally on the 7th of July. So they're going back to the streets. Yeah. I wonder how many more rallies, will be done, how many more protests will be done, and really how much influence that's having on William Ruto's government. If that is really affecting it positively in any way, if it's really holding him to account. Yeah. All right, that's what we have this morning on the Daily Nation. Let's head over to the west of the continent.
This kind of thing that you just one day just call Raila Odinga and say, Tekoya, you be president. You do it. Let's see how much better you can. For 1 week. Exactly. Let's see what you can do. Right? All right. In Nigeria this morning on the Punch newspaper, subsidy removal. Poor Nigerians will hit 101 million naira. 101 million, sorry, without palliative, says the World Bank. That's staggering, and that is more than half of Nigeria's population. Governors, IMF back subsidy removal, demand cash transfer scheme for poor Nigerians. And once again, economists and every person, who of course was monitored the way Nigeria functions and sees, what is on ground will tell you that cash transfer schemes are, mostly fraudulent and they do not work, neither do they lift anybody out of poverty. CBN measures failed to tackle inflation in first 6 months of 2023, the World Bank insists. Also, Tinubu, Can and governors preach tolerance at Salah. Federal government banks plan special IDs for senior citizens. You can also find here APC caucus, NEC meet July 10th and 11th. Top of the screen there, DSS alert, military police deploy teams in prayer grounds. More multinational manufacturers planning to exit Nigeria, says the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, MAN. Naira devaluation, expect a price hike, telcos tell Nigerians. Well, I mean, they're already, expecting it in electricity sector and in, petrol. So your telecoms will not be strange. These are the stories on the Punch this morning. We can quickly jump to the Daily Sun newspapers also here in Nigeria.
Yes, so still in Nigeria, the Daily Sun newspaper has a big story. Akpabio's choice of aides. Northern senators grumble, accusing Senate President of snubbing region in selection of personal staff. Leading Nigeria, one of hardest life challenges, says Buhari. He's told us, from what we've gathered so far, he might not be writing his, what's that word? What's that thing they all write? Writing about their life or their time in office, as most presidents do. I've forgotten what it's called. But anyway, he might not be writing. But it will be interesting to have him actually write about his time in office. And then let's get to see some of the things that happened that we probably weren't aware of. And just see how President Muhammadu Buhari's mind works. It'll be very interesting. He said it's one of the hardest challenges of his life.
His biography?
Yeah, thank you very much. His autobiography. It'd be nice to read that. There's always something to learn. Drivers block Enugu State Road over driver's passenger's abduction. That's not good. Igala, Mbasa indigenes protest at defense headquarters, allege ethnic cleansing. Oh, wow. Elections, EU recommends reform of INEC, 5 other areas, 101 violent incidents, 74 fatalities recorded during campaigns. Court dismisses Premier Academy suit, seeking to stop investigation into death of 14-year-old student. Why are they trying to stop investigation into the death of 14-year-old student? I believe this is the story of Whitney, who died a while ago. I want to believe that that's the story. And why are they seeking a suit to stop investigation into the death of the girl? If your hands are clean, why are you trying to stop it? And like we always say, that's how a number of these stories just get swept under
the rug, right?
If I didn't see this, I probably wouldn't have remembered as well.
Yeah.
A number of us, everybody has moved on, everybody has forgotten. The parents are still mourning and grieving the loss of their child with no justice anywhere.
Yeah.
ACF urges arms of government to restore public confidence in rule of law. Fire raises NLC president's home in Lagos. Oh wow, that's not good. And final story this morning. Ekweremadu, Ohaneze host British envoy pleads for leniency for ex-senator. Do you think that the British envoy will listen and grant Ekweremadu some form of leniency?
I don't think so. I think he will have to spend some time in prison. You know, if they decide to grant him leniency, it would be after he served out, a number of years. You know, I think he got 10 or 11 years. So he would have to spend a while. It would not be like Akpabio, who was Oju Zakalu, yes, who was given a 12-year sentence and spent only about 3 months and eventually left. But of course, that was blamed on technicalities in the process through which he was jailed. The judge was not meant to. I don't remember what it was, but I don't think it would be so easy for Ike Ekweremadu.
I also worry. I mean, it's an unfortunate scenario, but I also worry for his daughter, who was the main reason why all of this happened.
Oh yeah, very true.
Anyway, that's all we can take this morning. We have more papers to review, which we'll be doing in the second hour of the show. But for now, we're going to break. When we come back, we're going to be having conversations on our top stories. And if you'd like to speak about anything, engage with us. Tweet at News Central TV or share clips via Instagram, all our social media platforms at News Central TV. We'll be right back. Let's move to Botswana this morning with our top stories, where economist Bogolo Kenewendo, who made the headlines 5 years ago after becoming Botswana's trade minister at 30, making her one of the youngest government ministers in the world. She's now the UN Climate Champion Special Advisor for Africa.
In an interview with the BBC's Focus on Africa podcast, she has spoken about the sexual harassment and discrimination faced by women at the top of politics. Now, looking back at her 19 months in the job, she spoke about how she survived the environment. In her words, when you're a young woman in such a space, there are a lot of innuendos. How you got the job, how, of course, but even those who you work with, are fighting off sexual advances or even harassment in some cases at work. Now, joining us is our correspondent from Botswana, Tebogo Mokoto, to give insight into these conversations. Good morning, Tebogo.
Okay, good morning, Olive. How are you guys doing?
We're fantastic this morning. Great to see you. The conversation on sexual harassment in the workplace is not new. Across Africa, it's a very popular conversation. But of course, it's still shocking to hear it on these levels. So tell us a little bit, about her. How this news basically hits the people in Botswana.
I think obviously when the story broke on the BBC, a lot of people in Botswana were really looking at it closely, because as you'd understand, Osaki, just recently we've had another minister, specially elected member of parliament, Dr. Unity Dao rather, who decided to say she's going to step back or relinquish her position in the ruling BDP. Speaking of very, very toxic exchanges and a toxic environment to operate within, in the structures of the BDP, and you'd understand that Kinwendo was also under the BDP. So for her to come out and level these accusations, or rather these experiences, because they're essentially not accusations, these are things that she has gone through. So for her to level these also now further points us in the direction of paying attention when it comes to what might be happening behind closed doors that we are not necessarily aware of as journalists. So in discussing it, we're really looking to dig further into it, because you understand that even in the podcast, Kinwendo mentioned or speaks to the case, a severe case of sexual harassment or sexual assault, but doesn't necessarily delve into details in terms of who it involves, how it was handled. She says she reported it, and in reporting it, of course, it really helped in terms of the sexual offenders registry that we now have in the country. But she doesn't delve into details as to, is this a prominent figure in the ruling party? Is this one of the other ministers that we should really be looking at in terms of her experience and the harassment that she says she went through? Now, women in politics has also really in the past come out to say, fine, in light of Kinwendo's assertions, the sexual offenders register was implemented, but they're complaining that there's no reporting, there's nobody giving them feedback or even giving media feedback in terms of how the processes of this particular sexual offenders registry is going. Because gender-based violence in Botswana, in addition to rape and sexual assault, they've all spiked very sharply. So a lot of women are really speaking out against this, and Kinwendo coming out to say this has really added much needed traction in terms of really addressing this issue.
And I completely agree with you that Kinwendo speaking about this brings the much needed traction, because someone in her position with the level of influence and exposure that she has, in a way gives voice to the numerous number of women who may in some way be dealing with sexual harassment but be unable to speak about it. I want to talk about, the culture. Is there anything in some way, and this is a question that several countries around the continent need to answer. Are there areas or are there things in our culture that further perpetuate the culture of sexual harassment or, gender-based violence in this regard? Are there things that we probably need to have conversations about, maybe within the family settings, within the workplace settings, that we need to sort of bring to the fore to discourage, sexual harassment in any manner?
I think there is need. To discuss culture, because we've even in I'll keep it to Botswana, because obviously this is where maybe I understand a bit more.
All right.
We've seen a culture where women are encouraged to be rather submissive, and it has been that way ever since time immemorial, where
all right.
During marriage is rather told or set down by elders to say, we need you to be more compliant, and they would say, if a man does this, you need to be more lenient. It's been in our culture to really advise the woman to be more submissive and more docile when it comes to situations that deal with men. But now, when you place a woman in the professional space, you are talking about being in the boardroom, being engaged in debate, being engaged in really tense conversations. So I think culture does play into it, looking at African culture and where women have been placed in this particular setting. So there is need to address these cultural practices in order to adjust to the current status quo.
I want to talk about it from the men's perspective also, because when men hear sexual harassment, or hear about these things, sometimes their minds might race all the way to rape or actual physical, touch. And so tell us what the conversations are like in Botswana around men? Do men understand, that there's different levels of sexual harassment, that there's certain things, certain conversations that are wrong to have in the office space or generally to someone who you are not, in a relationship with? Or is it just understood that as long as you do not physically assault and sexually harass a person, then, all is fair?
I think right now, also, if you look at what Kinuendo said, she spoke of innuendos, where somebody would pass suggestive remarks and make such commentary. So I don't think there's enough discussion surrounding these issues to say, it still becomes offensive to especially a professional woman, because now women have a challenge to really assert themselves when it comes to the professional space. So now it becomes offensive if you are going to be making certain comments. I don't think we have enough discussions to really point out that it doesn't really mean that it's an offense once there's physical contact or there's rape and, comments as well. Snide comments, constant groping and touching somebody inappropriately, even if it's not suggestive, just really respecting a woman's personal space in the professional setup. I don't think these are conversations that we talk about the most or talk about enough, because what has happened in the past few days is that we've seen really heinous acts of this particular nature where it leads to death, where it's really physical rape and it's aggressive in really horrific ways. So we are not addressing the minor issues associated with sexual harassment because we are focused on the bigger aspects of the practice. So I don't think there's enough conversations.
All right. I think on a final note, I would also say in terms of perpetrators, right? Perpetrators of sexual assault. How strong are the laws in Botswana in enforcing punitive measures? Because what we see is that in a number of countries, why people don't want to complain about having been sexually assaulted is because, one, they complain about the difficulty with which it is to prove that this assault actually happened, and two, because they find that the laws are not strengthened to be able to protect the survivors. Rather, we then perpetrate a culture of abuse, a culture of silence, and focusing on the survivor as opposed to putting all the pressure on the abuser. So how would you rate the laws in Botswana in terms of their strength to protect the survivor and to punish the abuser?
I think the laws, Oliver, right now, what has been, because of the current state of affairs in terms of gender-based violence in general and sexual assault, the laws are being reviewed. But just as any other country in Africa, I feel like there's still more that needs to be done in terms of really addressing or really punishing the aggressors stringently, because now you'd have somebody in a position of leadership, for example, as is the case currently, where a politician is accused of alleged gender-based violence. You know what I mean? And there's nothing really that now bars them, or the party that this person belongs to has said they're going to stand by the candidate and they're not going to disbar this candidate because they don't want to start a witch hunt. I feel like such instances go to show that the law needs to be really tightened and detailed in terms of how we address and deal with these cases, because now what we've seen is that there's a spike. So now if there's a spike, it goes to say that there's no deterrent, there's no active deterrent currently in terms of perpetrators. So they are not afraid, or they don't have the mental fortitude that is enforced by stringent laws to say, I'm not going to take this course of action. I'm going to restrain myself because of fear of the law. So now, if there's no fear of the law, then that goes to say that the law is not yet at that stage where we can say it's acting as a deterrent, because we are seeing increasing numbers. Innuendo is one of many, as you'd imagine, Oliver. Some of them are, of course, afraid of speaking. I was having a conversation with one of my colleagues here, about this particular instance. She works in the corporate world. So she was noting to say, responding to my status to say, you know what, a lot of women go through this. We're afraid of talking. It's hard to talk because as a woman, currently, I'll tell you about me, I'm not progressing. My career is not where I thought it should. But if I come out and talk about the situations and that I find myself in, the uncomfortable moments that I find myself in with my male counterparts in the office,
Right.
it's going to hinder my progress. So no, women are not talking for that particular reason.
Okay, I mean, we can't stop talking about sexual harassment and gender-based violence. We will keep advocating beyond the days, the 16 days of activism at the end of each year. We will keep talking about it, and the more we talk about it, the more we shine the light. Thank you so much, Tebogo, for joining us this morning.
It's a pleasure, guys.
As well.
All right, let's move away from Botswana now. Police have arrested and charged former President Edgar Lungu's son, Daliso, and his wife, Matilda Milinga, for the offense of possession of property suspected to be proceeds of crime. Police spokesperson Ray Hamunga says the suspects, both aged 36, are directors of a company known as Saloy Traders Limited.
Police has disclosed that Daliso Lungu, son of former President Edgar Lungu, has been arrested with 69 motor vehicles valued at over 24 million kwacha, as well as money laundering of 23,981,966 kwacha. Joining us live from Lusaka is Isaac Moza, human rights activist, and he will throw more light on the situation. Good morning, and thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you very much for bringing me on board.
Okay, so right now there's an arrest that's been made, but this is not the first time we've seen that this conversation has been on. Over a year ago, he'd been invited for investigations and questioning in this matter. But some have referred to it as a witch hunt, by especially those who are supporters of Lungu. Tell us your thoughts on this and how the majority of people are reacting to it.
Well, there is, of course, some reaction in Zambia between the supporters of President Lungu and the supporters also of the current regime. As you have pointed out, others have described it as a witch hunt. Others are simply saying it is a law and it to be implemented. Those who are found wanting, they need to go to court and explain how they managed to get those resources. Now, this investigation started a long time ago. It started immediately after President Lungu left office. And it has been going on, and now we are being told that there is royalty which is amounting close to 100 billion, which that is through the son, the former president, and the wife. The law that was used to arrest them is a law that was enacted in 2010, the Proceeds of Crime Act.
Yeah, it's a struggle with the connection this morning. We hope that we can get that fixed, but the conversation, of course, is with former Zambian President Edgar Lungu and his corruption battles. Can you hear us now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I think it sounds better. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so what I was explaining is that the law is enacted. It's a law that was enacted in 2010. It gives the police officers, all law enforcement, the power to arrest people that are in possession of property, which is reasonably suspected of crime. The police don't need to go to court and prove anything. They need to just show that this person has this amount of wealthy and property, and looking at his income, they would have to compute the income, how much the person would have earned, and present before the court that the reasonably suspect that the excess property is the process of crime. And now it becomes the defendant shift to the accused person to defend themselves, to explain how they managed to acquire that property. If you fail to give a reasonable explanation as well, court might find you guilty, send you to prison, but also ensure that the property for people.
All right, it seems we're having some internet internet connection. We hope that we can reconnect with you and talk even further about this story. But thank you very much for joining us. It's an unfortunate update in terms of how corruption, it would seem that corruption might be a picture that we're trying to brand the continent with. There's more tonight. There's more to Africa than corruption. But it's also important that in curbing corruption, that those who have questions to answer be made to answer. We hope that, there is more light that is shed on the Edgar Lungu's on the Lungus, it's not Edgar Lungu, it's his son in this instance.
Well, on the Lungu
family to see exactly how they came up to this. Last year they had invited him for questioning. I think it was related to about 8 vehicles, and they were asking, the background of the vehicles. Are they related to the company? Is it tied to the company? There are a number of investigations that occurred. So I'm really hoping that there's more light that's being shown on this subject matter, and if your hands are guilty, you'll be made to pay to dance to the tune that you've already the music. So
yeah, but we also don't get to see this a lot, especially with past governments across Africa, and that's why the very first thought that comes to your mind is, oh, this looks like a witch hunt.
Yeah,
this looks like it's towards a particular direction. But of course, President Hakainde Hichilema has also been praised for his time in office. He has been praised by people in Zambia and even outside Zambia for his policies and some of the things that he's been put in motion for the country. And of course, it seems like he's having a very, very good run in office. So this might also just be part of the the things that he had promised Zambians. A complete fight against corruption. But it would be nice to also X-ray his own government to see that his government is also not doing the same things that former President Edgar is being accused of. But we would never know. We can always we probably would find out later after his rule. But for now, of course, we will follow up in that story and see where it leads with the Lungu family corruption allegations. Let's take a short break now and of course move into the world of sports and share with you some of the latest stories over there.
Thanks for staying with us. It's still Breakfast Central and it's time for sports updates. Now we'll begin with South African sports, where South Africa's sprint sensation Akani Simbine was in fine form as it coasted home to victory at the men's 100 meters event of the Golden Spike Athletics Meet. Simbine won in a time of 9.98 seconds ahead of Italy's Samuele Ceccarelli in 10.15 seconds, while Canada's Olympic 200 meters champion Andre de Grasse rounded out the podium in third place with a season's best of 10.21 seconds. Meanwhile, Zambian speedster Muzala Samukonga won the men's 400 meters event in a time of 45.05 seconds. Ethiopia's Lamika Gima, the world record holder in the 3,000 meters steeplechase, won the 1,500 meters in a personal best of 3 minutes, 33.15 seconds.
Here he is there in lane 5. You can see he's only got the man, Gilles Biron from France, outside him at that moment. But look inside now. Here's Vernon Norwood. Vernon Norwood has gone a lot steadier through that first 200 meters.
To the African Beach Games taking place in Tunisia we go now. Mamour Diagne starred with a well-worked hat-trick as defending champion Senegal hit Kenya's Arambi Sandstars for 12 in their opening match at the second edition of the Africa Beach Games in Tunisia. Raoul Mendy, Diane, Serine Makta Koite were among the goal scorers for Senegal, while Kenyan skipper Farid Bwana scored the team's consolation goal. Kenya will now switch their attention to a vital second group match against neighbors Tanzania on Wednesday morning, a game they must win to keep their knockout hopes alive. To the Under-23 African Cup of Nations we go in terms of results. You had Guinea spanking Congo by 3-1 to ensure that they keep their semi-final hopes alive, while for Morocco, they sealed a semi-final berth courtesy of a 5-1 thrashing of Ghana. Away from that, still talking football matters. Former Zambia national team midfielder Rainford Calabar has announced his retirement from active football. The 2012 African Cup of Nations winner has since been offered a job to be part of the TP Mazembe technical team. Calabar won several honors during his playing days, such as the Zambian League and Cup with Zesco United, as well as 5 Lena Food titles, including the 2015 CAF Champions League title, 2011 and 2016 CAF Super Cup, as well as the 2016 CAF Confederation Cup. We wish him the very best in retirement. Still talking football matters, but this time around on the European scene, UEFA is set to close a loophole on Wednesday, allowing clubs to spread the cost of big transfer fees over lengthy contracts. Now, Chelsea have caught the eye of many over the last 2 transfer windows by signing players on long deals, including a £107 million January recruit of Enzo Fernandez on an 8.5-year contract. The Blues have done so in order to spread the cost of the transfer fee over a greater period of time, as well as comply with UEFA's financial regulations, something which is currently permitted. However, it is understood that UEFA's executive committee will update the regulations when it meets on Wednesday. It is expected that there will be no limit on the length of a contract, but the cost of any transfer fee will have to be spread over a maximum of 5 years. Still talking football matters on the international scene, Real Madrid manager Carlo Ancelotti has settled a high court dispute with his former club, Everton Football Club of England. Now, court records showed that the Italian was suing Everton, who he managed between December 2019 and June 2021. The claim related to general commercial contracts and agreements, but the listing gave no other details. Away from that to tennis, the WTA announced on Tuesday that it is revising its season calendar and rules about which players must enter certain tournaments, while also setting up a pathway to equal prize money. The plan is to have matching payouts across all rounds of singles at the joint WTA ATP 1500 events, the 2 levels right below the 4 slams by 2027, and to make sure that single week WTA only 1500 events that are being played at the same time but at different sites as their ATP only 1500 equivalents are offering the same money as those of their counterparts by 2033. It is definitely a good one right there from the WTA in terms of the fight for equal pay when it comes to the world of tennis. And that wraps up sports updates at this time. It's back to you, Olive.
Thank you very much, Samson, for the sports update.
Yeah, and of course, interesting story you just shared now with the WTA looking for equal pay for their players. I'm not sure how they're going to, balance it out. Are they going to be funding, some of these equal pay, or are they expecting, that? I mean, because the argument really is if you make enough money, really. You will, of course, get paid. But if you're not raking in those funds, where does the extra money come from?
Well, from sponsors, basically, and it's all about getting the women who also put in the same amount of dedication, effort, training, and what have you, to get the same equal prize money as the men. Now, it must be said that the 4 slams are doing that, talking about the Australian Open, French Open, Wimbledon, as well as the US Open. They are offering the same prize money, but not all tournaments within the various calendars do that. For example, the Italian Open or the Rome Masters, if you want to call it that, has a different prize money with, the women's pay definitely something to, nothing to write home about, really. Last year, you had Iga Swiatek winning that, and she went home with roughly about $330,000 compared to Novak Djokovic, who went home with about $900,000 winning the same event. So these are some of the issues on the tour. As much as the big slams or the big tours are doing that, the other events, the smaller events, need to also measure up in terms of equal pay. And we like the fact that, for example, the Italian Open I mentioned earlier, that's the Rome Masters, have committed that by 2025, there will be, parity when it comes to payments for, winners. So hopefully other events also take that line, and the WTA, the ATP, the relevant governing bodies are able to enforce that, or at least play their parts in ensuring that we have equal pay across all tournaments.
I mean, it's a fantastic thing. It's something that I've talked about on the show. Osage and I have had these arguments, and there have been several perspectives that they've raised. I mean, it's a valid point that Osage did mention here. They talked about money, being able to generate enough money to be able to fund the sport. But whilst we've talked about, even in real life, we've talked about gender parity, the gender gap, bridging the gender gap, and some of the challenges that further widen the gender gap. For example, gender pay gap, I beg your pardon, COVID-19, and several other situations. Whilst they have this goal, what's the potential of this goal being actually achieved in the coming years? Because we've had to go to breached the gender gap for years. And some years is wider, some other years is like, okay, we're making progress. But from where we stand, how feasible is the achievement of this parity?
Well, I think for a sport like tennis, it's very feasible. You have to look at the growth of the women's game. Over the years, it's grown beyond the days of Billie Jean King, who was a vocal, presence on the WTA tour at the time. Serena Williams, while during her A-days, oftentimes commands a large number of gatherings to tournaments. The same thing with Iga Swiatek right now, the world #1, who is dominating the scene. I think the women's sports, when it comes to tennis, has grown in that aspect. It may not be as much as the men in terms of the numbers in Novak Djokovic will command to a court, but you can't deny the fact that the growth is very similar. It's not as the gap isn't as wide as it used to be in football, for example. And even at that, for women's football, we've seen a rapid growth in terms of viewership, in terms of attendance at the venues or match venues as it were. So I think it's all about keying into the trajectory that we have right now in terms of bringing those various tours, both the men and women, bringing them at par and ensuring that sponsors pay their part.
Yeah, so this is where I feel like I always get stuck, because if we agree, and if of course the organizers agree that they put in an equal amount of effort in promoting female sports as they do in promoting male sports, there is no lack of promotion for female sports compared to male sports. But somehow, some way, the men just, men games or men's sport just seem to make more money. I just feel, a type of way, because it almost feels like when someone is hired because, they're, for example, of course, no disrespect to the albino community, when you hire a person simply because, they're trying to fill up quotas, or you hire a person because they're female and say, okay, well, we're trying to fill up the quota that we have for hiring, we must have 2 females, we must have 1, person, disabled, and some of all of that. That's what it kind of feels like here, that you're only paying me because, well, we've made commitments that we will pay you higher, not necessarily because you are bringing in the value or bringing in the money that, requires us to pay you this amount. So if a Novak Djokovic game, rakes in, for example, $20 million, I don't know how much they bring in, and then the Iga Swiatek, rakes in $7 million, and then you decide that you're going to pay both of them the same thing.
Amount, yes.
It kind of just feels like the other person is being compensated because of their gender, not necessarily because they've been able to rake in the amount of money that they should, to earn that amount. Exactly, it sounds like tokenism, and I don't know how the women will feel about that. So I feel like they also need to figure out ways that they can boost women's sports to be able to generate the crowd, the excitement, and the love, that men's sports also generates. Well, so it doesn't feel like tokenism.
I quite understand, that standpoint and those who hold that bias. I think we should also look at it from, the trajectory, as I said, 5-6 years ago. Where were these women's sports in terms of followership, viewership, in terms of the numbers they're able to command, even in terms of gate receipts, merchandise, and all of that in terms of sales, the commercial aspect of sports. When you look at that to what we have now, you know quite well that the difference is clear. There's been, a growth, and I think we should just key into that, really.
We can't exhaust this conversation.
Definitely.
Tokenism as a woman, me, I'm saying, so long as it's involving more money, it's okay. I'm not complaining. Please bring in more money. We'll work on the other parts later.
Women's tennis is great, though. It's doing very well.
Yes, doing really well. Yeah. So yes, that's not to discountenance the effort that women are putting in this sport, because they're doing amazing. Yeah. Thank you so much, Samson, for joining us with Sport Updates.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, it's been 1 hour bringing stories around the continent in sports, as well as some of the big stories. Let's share with you what we've discussed so far. Went to Zambia, where we talked about the arrest of former President Edgar Lungu's son and his wife on charges of corruption.
And ex-Botswana minister addresses sexual harassment at work.
And a conversation that we had Tebogo join us for. And in the world of sports, Simbine donates 100-meter field as Samukonga wins 400 meters gold. But that's not all. Let's share with you what's coming up next.
This morning, the Nigerian government imposes annual fee on car owners.
Nigerians don't like that. Idel Kabir, remember the less fortunate President Tinubu says, in other words, you should allow the poor breathe.
And in entertainment, Iniedo opens up about dealing with critics.
Sometimes, it's not just the distance we travel. It's the gaps we close. It's not the things we buy. It's the memories we create. Sometimes, it's beyond the places we go. It's the connections we make. Not just the things we taste. It's the taste of things to come. And it's never a question of if, but when. Because life is always just a bit better with American Express. Introducing the Access Bank American Express Gold Card and the Metal Platinum Card, now available through Access Bank.
You wake up to a lot of stories about Africa.
But this is where you get the story straight.
Where we explore different angles because we understand our stories.
There's that passion when it's your perspective and not a distant perception.
I know you hear it a lot, but it's true. Nobody can tell your story better than you.
That's what we do.
All day, every day,
on News Central TV.
Our African stories by Africans for Africans.
News Central TV, Africa's #1 storyteller, has come with the best of both worlds. With a combination of news app and live TV, we ensure that you keep track of the latest headlines, breaking news, and in-depth analysis from professional journalists. Download the News Central TV app on Android and iOS and get started today. Don't forget to follow us on News Central's social media platforms. News Central, Africa first.
Hey lovers, my name is Sharon Ojai-Grube.
Hi guys, my name is Femi Adebayo.
My name is Anado Odigesiabojo.
Steve Chicks, I'm an actor.
Uche Montana.
Popularly known as Neo Energy. My name is Neo Mobakofre. Uzo Arope, you're hanging out with News Central.
Keep watching.
Keep watching. Keep watching.
News Central TV. News Central TV.
News Central TV.
News Central TV. Did you hear me? And if I'm
Hello, this is Breakfast Headlines on News Central Television with me, Blessings Mosugu. Let's start in Algeria, where President Bola Tinubu has returned to Lagos from his international trips to Paris and London, respectively. The president on Tuesday arrived at the Murtala Mohammed International Airport in Lagos at exactly 5:13 p.m. local time. Tinubu was received by supporters and high-ranking members of the ruling All Progressives Congress, the APC, including Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu of Lagos State, amid warm display by colorful members of the Presidential Guard. The president had traveled to Paris, France on Friday, during which he participated in the summit for a new global financing pact hosted by French President Emmanuel Macron. According to his spokesman, Dele Alake, after the two-day summit, the president proceeded to London, United Kingdom, for a short private visit. Tragedy was averted on Tuesday afternoon in Lagos, Nigeria, after a vehicle caught fire on 3rd Mainland Bridge. The car, which was identified to be a 2017 Volvo model, was burned to ashes, in which it was described as a suspected electrical malfunction. According to eyewitnesses, men of the State Fire Service arrived at the scene almost immediately to avert further crisis and quickly put out the fire. The car, which was said to be worth almost 30 million naira, was reportedly newly imported and was about to be delivered to its owner by the mechanic that had it taken for repairs. The auto mechanic, who also drove the car, was rescued by passers-by after he attempted to jump into the Lagos Lagoon out of shock.
This car is owned by a customer of my friend who is a mechanic. So actually, he has not finished the job on it. Why the person that owns the car said he's very close to he's back in the country, that he is sending the driver to come and pick it up. And the mechanic insisted, he said the work is not done yet, that let him just finish the work. And the owners insisted that he should bring the car to him for him to pick it up at the airport. So on his way down to this place, this was when it occurs. They are both in the car. Why even the mechanic himself almost jumped to the river here because of what happened, because that is not his fault. You know, when something happened unexpectedly, so he nearly wanted to jump to the lagoon because he didn't know any explanation to give to the owner, or to tell him that the car you tell him to bring has burnt due to it has not finished up the job, which I'm still stating this. The owner insisted that he should bring the car to him to the airport, which he told him that this car.
Meanwhile, Sierra Leone's President Julius Maada Bio has been declared the winner of Saturday's presidential election. This was announced by the head of the Electoral Commission on Tuesday, following a process disputed by the opposition. According to final results announced in Freetown by Commission Chief Mohammed Kenewu Kone, Bio was re-elected with 56.17% to serve a second term. His main challenger, Samura Kamara, came second with 41.16% of the vote.
I hereby certify that Bio Julius Maada having polled 1,566,932 of the valid vote cast, representing 56.17% of the total valid vote cast in the 24th June 2023.
Still in West Africa, where the United Nations plans to end its decade-long peacekeeping mission in Mali on the 30th of June and will withdraw all personnel within 6 months. This is according to a draft Security Council resolution proposed by France. The withdrawal of the 13,000-strong mission known as MINUSMA would come after years of tensions between the UN and Mali's military junta came to an end this month when Mali Foreign Ministry or Minister Abdoulaye Diop asked the force to leave without delay. It would mean an abrupt halt to a mission that has been hobbled by government restrictions since Mali teamed up with Russia's Wagner mercenary group in 2021. And now in East Africa, Kenyan government has completed the third phase of post-mortems on the bodies believed to be followers of a cult led by Paul Mackenzie in Tenge. The process of exhumation had been halted until there was enough capacity to store and autopsy more bodies. So far, 338 post-mortems have been carried out on the bodies exhumed from the expansive Shakahola forest, which is linked to the cult 201, of which were adults. 117 were children, but the ages of 20 others could not be established because they were badly decomposed. Still in East Africa, 26 Ugandans at 5 French and Ugandan associations launched new legal action in France to seek reparation from French giant Total Energies. According to the legal document, the action is for the damage they claim was caused by its controversial oil mega project in Uganda. The same coalition had already sued the oil company at the end of 2019 under the Duty of Vigilance Act, but the courts dismissed their case in February on procedural grounds.
Aujourd'hui, il s'agit d'une action en réparation, c'est-à-dire que les communautés affectées demandent réparation pour les préjudices qu'ils ont subis, les violations qui ont été commises par Total, ses filiales et ses sous-traitants depuis 6 ans. Pour rappel, les préjudices pour lesquels ils demandent réparation, c'est les préjudices causés à leur droit de copropriété, donc liés à l'accaparement de les terres, à l'acquisition de leurs terres pour les projets de Total, la violation de leur droit à l'alimentation, les impacts causés sur les terres agricoles par les inondations provoquées par les travaux de terrassement pour construire l'usine de traitement de pétrole, et enfin la violation de la liberté d'expression, d'opinion et de manifestation des membres des communautés affectées ou des défenseurs des droits humains.
As I'm a project affected person, my home was where a central processing facility.
Well, that's all we have for you on the news at this hour. It's back to Olive and Oselge for the rest of the show.
Thank you very much. Blessings, Mosugu, for those stories. We'll see you again at 9 a.m.
Thank you.
And of course, it's now time for us to go into the newspapers to share with our viewers what some of the biggest stories making headlines across the continent are this morning. That comes up right next.
As the guardians of the news around the continent, it's important that we share with you what's on the front page of The Guardian. Today is Wednesday, so I had to crack a dry joke. Inflation and subsidy removal. 7.1 million Nigerians may become poorer as families face 5,700 naira monthly loss. Nigeria's multidimensional poverty index MPI by states according to 2022. You can see there's a map here that's showing the MPI value ranges from 0 to 1, with 1 showing higher poverty, and the numbers are not looking good. Despite hitches, Nigerians joined 2 million pilgrims pray at Mount Arafat. Beware kidnappers of students on the prowl. We've been seeing a lot of stories like this. I mean, anyway, it's not new to see that lots of students have been kidnapped. Some of them I don't know how it happens, but we've always heard stories about students who, so I don't know the degree to which they mean kidnapper of students on the prowl. Do they mean kidnappers going to schools to actually kidnap these students? Or the ones who are unassuming students going to school, maybe they enter BRT buses or they enter into a one chance vehicle? I mean, I don't know what it is, but I think everyone does need to be aware.
I mean, I agree. Everyone needs to be aware, but at the same time, when we see things like this, I personally would always like to question how much better our security has gotten. On the federal level, state level, local government level, in every way. In what ways have we developed and modified the security architecture in Nigeria? And of course, are we still at the stage where we fear that terrorists can walk into a school in Adamawa State and kidnap 200 children or 50 children?
Yes.
Or in Katsina State? Are we at a stage where a child can be taken from school here in Lagos State and, there's no security architecture to trace, no cameras, no, no technology to be able to at least assure the parents that child will be found? Those for me are the big questions. We cannot keep doing the same things expecting.
They're not rhetorical questions. Yeah. Well, hopefully with the new NSA chief, Nuhu Ribadu, will have renewed hope and not renewed shege in the area of kidnapping. Still on the front page, motorists to pay 1,000 naira for proof of ownership certificate from July. Salah, Katsina governor rejects 100 rams for philanthropists. Why? Someone sent him 100 rams. That's interesting that he'd actually reject that. That's good. For me, it seems that he's trying to set boundaries to say, no, don't do any of all these unnecessary things. Yeah. I'm not going to give you any appointments of any sort. Lobbyists storm Bodyland for ministerial appointments. Interesting. Akpabio, Atiku, Khan, others advocate peace, sacrifice for national development. Who is making this sacrifice for national development is what we keep asking on the show. Who should be making the sacrifice? Only the people, or should the politicians at some point decide to generously make some of the sacrifices too? These are the stories on the front page of The Guardian. Let's head over to the Daily Trust, still here in Nigeria.
All right, on the Daily Trust newspapers this morning, it says, economic security challenges surmountable, says Tinubu. Akpabio, Abbas, others preach love and unity. Buhari urges support for President. Atiku Obi call for prayers. Many World Bank grants mired in corruption, says the ICPC. Really? And also, bride's relative steals dowry in Kano State. Again, Boko Haram kills 7 farmers in Damboa. And also, Shatima, federal government to accelerate access to single-digit loans for MSMEs. A few other stories. Sokoto, man killed for blasphemy, buried amidst tears. And once again, what is the Nigerian police and the Nigerian government going to do about these things happening on Nigerian soil? Why do we continue? I mean, the same way we would condemn jungle justice in any other part of the country, why will a Nigerian be killed in broad daylight by fellow Nigerians, stoned to death, stabbed, beaten to death, burned to death, whatever it is, and we still will not be able to put a foot down as a country and say no to this?
It's very unfortunate because this is not the first time that we've seen things like this happening. We've seen other people who have been killed because of religious extremism and nothing is being done. So if when, I believe it was Deborah yes, was killed, we had seen like strong measures being taken, maybe this would never have happened. Maybe this would have sent, that would have sent a warning message to perpetrators that if you have any grouse, take it to court. There are penal courts for a reason.
The reaction to Deborah's murder, sets a precedence for what comes next in those parts of the country. And so once again, even if they would like to play the ostrich and stick their heads in the sand, suppose police PROs, would rather focus on skit makers than actual people, murders that have been committed in the country. These are the things that the current Nigerian government would have to face. And it's not something that you can ignore, act like you're not seeing. Demolition, Kano traders hold special prayers, and also currency in circulation hit 2.5 trillion naira in May 2023, says a report. If we have time to squeeze in a few stories from the nation before we go on a break.
All right, let's quickly run through the nation and see what's happening on the front page. Eid al-Kabir, our challenges surmountable, Tinubu assures. President marks Eid in Lagos, governing Nigeria a tough job, says Buhari. Single-digit interest loans coming for MSMEs. World Bank projects 2 trillion naira saving for federal government in 6 months from subsidy removal. Provide safety net for the poor and vulnerable. Naval rating beaten to death. Woman sells neighbor's child for 1.7 million naira. This is wild. EU observers report on results transmission unfair, says INEC. Vehicle owners to pay 1,000 yearly for proof of ownership, which is a conversation we'll have shortly. 9 firearms ex-aides among 21 commissioners designate. Travelers trapped as rain destroys Benin Akure highway. Final stories. UBA unveils Braille account. Okay, and then there's Braille account opening form. I think that's brilliant. And Pencom hammers operators. That's all that we have on the Nation newspaper, and that's quite frankly all the newspapers we're reviewing this morning. We of course will be doing recap on our social media platforms, so be sure to follow us at News Central TV across all social media handles. We're going to break, and when we come back we have our top stories, so please stay with us.
Take it from me, the mind-blowing way to do things is the Glow LTE advanced way. When you stream, it's like you're in the drama itself. You reach where others can't. Copy! Doing business is like running Wall Street from your street. And when you play,
I did beat the guy. We'll see about that.
It's like traveling the world without moving an inch.
Is that Toby in your room?
You can download in the blink of an eye in 4K. Go. And when you go for your dreams, it's like running with the strength of 3 nations behind you.
Glow LTE Advanced, the power of 3 data networks in one. Get a Glow SIM or dial *301#.
You wake up to a lot of stories about Africa.
But this is where you get the story straight.
Where we explore different angles because we understand our stories.
There's that passion when it's your perspective and not a distant perception.
I know you hear it a lot, but it's true. Nobody can tell your story better than you.
That's what we do.
All day, every day,
on News Central TV.
Our African stories by Africans for Africans.
Africa needs its own storytellers, people who understand the continent because they're from it. People who know that news is more than just data, it's our stories. Because these stories run deeper than headlines and segments. It's about digging deeper to get the facts and telling the human side of every single story, not just the echoes from foreign headlines and perspectives. It's time to take back our narratives and share them in our voices. The birth of Africa's New Age reporting, and this is where it begins, right here at News Central TV, with stories that put Africa first.
News Central TV, Africa's #1 storyteller, has come with the best of both worlds. With a combination of news app and live TV, we ensure that you keep track of the latest headlines, breaking news, and in-depth analysis from professional journalists from around the continent. Download the News Central TV app on Android and iOS and get started today. Don't forget to follow us on News Central's social media platforms. News Central, Africa First.
Welcome once again to Breakfast Central. Now, car owners in Lagos will now pay a minimum of 1,000 naira annually as the Lagos State government has imposed a proof of ownership certificate for all categories of registered vehicles. The new policy was announced by Engineer Abdulaziz Toriola, who is the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Transportation at the Baguda Kato Press Center, Alausa, Lagos. The Permanent Secretary said the certificate would cost a minimum of 1,000 naira and it is expected to be adopted across the states of the Federation. According to the most recent data from the National Bureau of Statistics, registered vehicles in Nigeria are about 11 million plus as of 2018. Nigeria's annual vehicle demand is 720,000 units. Local manufacturers supply only 14,000 units, which is leading to massive importation. Joining us on these issues is Nnameka Obiariri, is a public affairs analyst, to share his insights on this development. Mr. Obiariri, good morning. Thanks for joining us. And like many people have said, welcome to, just like Tinubu in Lagos, we are now seeing, of course, the federal government, Tinubu in the federal government. It is, these stories have brought about, allegations of massive taxation that is about to hit Nigerians. Do you agree that this just might be one of such?
First of all, thanks for having me. Yes, this is one of such, but it does not make sense to me. And it does not make sense because if you look at the number of registered cars in Nigeria, as of today, it's about 11.86 million. Nigeria actually controls 75% of the number of cars in West Africa. Now, 1,000 per annum is about 11 billion naira. What value does it add to the economy based on the current market situation? One thing that worries me is that those in power are always looking at ways of stifling the economy, taking from the poor, making the poor poorer, while allowing the cost of governance to continue to blow out of proportion. What do we do? Why are we like this in this country? Do you know the impact of the other policies on the economy alone? Today, to import the cheapest car into Nigeria, you have to pay an import tariff of not less than 1.3 million naira. And are you aware that 95% of Nigerians will not end up to 1.3 million naira per annum? We're not even talking about buying a car, we're talking about just clearing it. Now they are trying to impose 1,000 naira on vehicles. What this government should be concerned about is how they will create the enabling environment, security, physical architecture to ensure that the average Nigerian is able to put money in their pocket. He's a man that is buoyant that you can pay. 95.4% of Nigerians do not even earn enough to come out of the poverty threshold of $5.50 income per day. And trying to introduce all manner of taxation, trying to extort more, while not causing the cost of governance is a bit atrocious. This government should concern itself with putting in place programs. Look at today in Nigeria. The cost of clearing a vehicle in Nigeria is about 70%. In Benin, it ranges between 18% to 35%. That is why the average Nigerian will go to Cotonou, will go to Togo to clear his vehicle and find a way of cutting it into Nigeria. What this government should concern is that Nigeria is a very big economy under the ACTFA framework. We are a massive economy that should act as a transshipment port for the rest of Sub-Saharan Africa. From that sector alone, we can get nothing less than $25 billion if we plug in the holes. What should concern all this? Car is not a luxury, for crying out loud. Most of these cars we're talking about are low-end cars. The average Nigerians are suffering, the average Nigerians are being stifled, and you are trying to impose, take from them here, pick from them here, without creating the enabling environment for them to get into active productivity of goods and services. Do you know that if this government can put in place measures to bring in the 55 million unemployed and underemployed Nigerians into the formal economy, at least there's no Nigerian who is healthy and active that cannot make at least 5,000 naira income every day. If you create the enabling environment, security environment, the policy environment to put 55 million Nigerians who are currently underemployed and unemployed, that will be additional inflow of over 71 trillion revenue into the economy. And that is growing the economy by average of 22% from those who are not actively engaged. But all they are after is how they will pinch money from the poor here. Look at the other day, I saw the video circulating with a convoy of almost about 25 SUVs. And these SUVs are going to be fueled with taxpayers' money. This government should look back to what works for us.
The president's convoy is even bigger than that, much bigger than that. And I saw a video this morning of the president's convoy, and this when he arrived Lagos yesterday, and we're talking 50, 60, even more cars in one convoy. And I did speak about this, earlier today. The NSA, Nuhu Ribadu, flying to Lagos to welcome the president, who went on a private visit to London when both their offices are in Abuja. The whole idea of cutting down the cost of governance just doesn't seem, like anything the current government is after.
Mr. the president will beg to probably differ. I'd like us to look at the front page of the Nation newspaper. The front page of the Nation newspaper, the big story this morning reads that, according to the president, he says, "Our challenge is surmountable," Tinubu assures. This is, of course, as he speaks about Idel Kabir. And this is a headline that we've seen across different papers whilst we review them this morning. And I'd like to find out your thoughts. Does it really, with the way the current administration has been going on so far, does it really inspire hope and encouragement in the heart of Nigerians to think that, yes, it's been a bit rough? You know how sometimes there's a rough patch, but you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. Can Nigerians really see the light at the end of the tunnel? Because it seems like it's been one difficult issue after another. Import duties have increased by 40%. They're adding 1,000 naira tax, which maybe to some might seem like, oh, it's just 1,000 naira annually. But when you've gotten the vehicle, you've gotten your proof of ownership at the point of purchase, what is really the need to keep paying 1,000 naira every day that would amount to every year, that would amount to billions yearly? So is there really that light at the end of the tunnel? And are these challenges really surmountable, Mr. Obiari?
Their actions do not in any way, form and manner, inspire confidence. What is another bunch of looters, extortionists, taking over from where we stopped under Buhari? Because it does not make sense. I have lived in this land for over 23 years, postgraduate working experience. The richest man in Africa, Aliko Dangote, I've known him for over 20 years. You can never see Aliko Dangote in a convoy of more than 5 vehicles. That is the wealthiest man in Africa, wealthier than any person living in Nigeria and Africa. But here you see another local government councillor, chairman, going with a convoy of 6-10 vehicles. It does not make sense. The other day I read the Speaker of the National Assembly, House of Rep, engaged over 58 to do what in this country? Between 1960 to 1966, the parliamentarians were part-timers. Their salaries were tied to the pegs of office of civil servants. So it was part-time. They weren't even being paid more than civil servants. They didn't even have the kind of convoys. The richest man in Africa then, Sir Louis Odimegoju, was a parliamentarian. He was the chairman of 15 top corporations in Nigeria. The guy was going there as a part-timer. And I read a story about how he was insulted by one of the parliamentarians and he walked away. Governance was a call to serve. People made money in the private sector and come into the public sector to come and put in their money. People like Desa Mumbakwe, people like Alex Ekweme entered government and came out poorer. But today you see poor urchins fighting, bribing, killing their way into power just to make it a bazaar. What does the speaker need 33 to 58 to do as a speaker of this assembly? So if they want to inspire confidence, this is not the only country that have done reform before. In other countries, in Egypt, when Sisi wanted to do this kind of reform, the first thing Sisi did was to cut cost of governance down by 50%. Cost of governance across board. Today in Nigeria, over 2.2 trillion are stolen through budget padding. We do not have any zero budgeting process. All they do is year on year, they will just cut 20% into the past budget and they will just keep on stealing. You will see sometimes, you look at the budget overhead, you will see over a period of 3 years, the same item listed. No checks, no balances, it is looting spree. If we must inspire confidence, cost of governance in Nigeria, it does not make sense. Today, we spent practically our oil revenues, our borrowings, our non-tax revenues from NIMASA, MPA, FIRS to service the profligacy, corruption, wanton waste of less than 1 million civil servants and public servants. For crying out loud, Nigeria is a 210 million populated economy. And we cannot build this economy servicing the corruption, the profligacy, the waste and irresponsibility of less than 1 million people who work in the public space.
I'd like to quickly jump in on something you've said. You've highlighted a number of areas in which we should cut the cost of governance, one of which will be the Speaker of the House of Representatives getting 32 to 33 aides. And then there's also the conversation about VIP police, or convoys, as we refer to them. A few days ago, I believe 2 days ago, the news carried that the Acting Inspector General of Police had said that VIP police is totally cut off. There's also been the conversations on religious pilgrimage. We did have that conversation yesterday. The government offering subsidized fees to religious pilgrimage. I'd like to find your thoughts on these two areas. One, the VIP police. He's promised that it is going to be taking off. Do you see that actually happening? And also, are you in support of the government funding the pilgrimage or granting some level of subsidy to those who want to go to Jerusalem or Mecca, as the case may be?
VIP policing is an anathema to economic growth. It also shows clearly the kind of segregated economy we run. There are first-class citizens and second-class. There is practically underpoliced. Less than 400,000 police men and women to police a population of about 210, 220 million. This, of course, there will always annual ritual. An IG comes into place, he calls back the VIP police, then the VIPs go back to him, give him his own informal economy, give them the own money, and they will reallocate them. It's an economy that is so huge. The kind of monies these VIPs pay to have those police, if it was actually officially allocated, I can tell you it runs into tens of billions of naira. But those monies go into private pocket of those in the police service commission and those are the police hierarchy. And which is very, go to the developed economies, go to Singapore, go to Indonesia, go to UAE, you will never see this kind of madness. On the issue of pilgrimage, Nigeria has no business sponsoring anybody to go on any religion, whether a Muslim, a Hindu, a Christian. Government, in fact, let me tell you, agencies like the Pilgrimage Board should be totally extinguished, should be banned, should be removed from one of the MDAs. It does not make sense sponsoring anybody. If you're spiritual enough, you love God enough, you want to make. I'm a Christian. David said, "I cannot offer to God what cost me nothing." Anybody who has potential, who wants to go on a pilgrimage to Mecca, to Medina, to Jerusalem, to Rome, should be able to pay for that trip. God is everywhere. God is not in one location. So I do not see the reason why in 2023 Nigeria should still retain any agency for whatever pilgrimage board, be it Christianity, Islam, Hindu, whatever, even Orthodox. Those kind of agencies should be scrapped. Those kind of anatomic practices that have been destroying this economy should be removed and zeroed off.
All right.
All right. I want to also ask, because there would always be the defense, that there is nothing wrong with increased taxation. And even during the campaign season, Bola Ahmed Tinubu did say, that one of the things was did he say widen the tax bracket? Or I don't remember the words that he used. But he basically painted the picture of, seemingly focusing a little bit more on taxation, which, economic analysts would argue there's nothing wrong with taxation, and so if we look closely at this, can we argue, or can the government argue that this is really just one of the policies with which they need to raise money for government? Nigeria is at a very, very critical stage financially and economically at this point. We cannot keep borrowing money. So can the government argue that there is nothing wrong with simply looking for or creating means with which to raise more funds for governance?
Osage, I am one of the people that believe so much that Nigeria is one of the countries that has the least tax to GDP. Nigeria tax to GDP is about 6 to 7%. It does not make any sense. In Egypt, in South Africa, it's about 30% tax. In fact, the last year performance of South Africa, out of the over $126 billion that South Africa earned, about $80 billion came by way of tax, personal tax and corporate tax. Why are Nigerians not contributing so much? There's a lot of leakages in the system, leakages and corruption in the public sector. And again, who will even tax? Based on the demographics, those at the lower end of the economic pyramid. As I tell you today, over 95.5% of Nigerians do not even earn enough income to escape poverty. The poverty threshold is about $5.50. $5.50 income a day in a month is about 127,000 naira a month. How many Nigerians earn 127,000 naira a month? That's the question you should ask. In other countries like Europe, even in some of the developing economies who are even better than in the early 60s, those who live below $5.5 income per day are actually placed under social security schemes. They receive stipends from government. So for a man who does not even earn enough to take him home, who depends on charities, helps from parents, from brothers and sisters, then you're charging him tax. Tax from where? You're actually taking from him what somebody who paid tax on gave to him. It does not make sense. So what we should be thinking about is how do we put in place the policy? See, public service is a place where policymakers are thinkers. People you place in public service are creative thinkers, people who are creative imaginators, who try to twinkle things to bring out policies, programs that will put everybody into active productivity of goods and services like we had in the First Republic. If we can put the 110 million adult population of Nigeria, if we can put 70% of them to work, we can easily grow this economy GDP by average of about 10 to 15% per annum. If the average Nigerian makes 5,000 naira every day, the working population about 110,000 minimum, and you tax them 10%, You will be putting into this economy on an annual basis over 200 trillion naira. But the problem is that those who make money without enterprise are not taxed because you can't even have any way of measuring them. If we try to, we have asked about digitizing operations across all the sectors. If you want to stop the leakages in all the MDAs, we must try as much to stop the human-to-human interface. Digitize operations from NIMASA to MPA to FIRS to other places. When we can stop the leakages, stop the oil theft, stop the insecurity across Nigeria, bring security back to the regions, to the communities. When the economy can work actively, when lives and property are secure 24/7, you will see Nigerians happy to pay tax. Nigerians provide their own borehole, they do their own roads, they provide their own electricity. So what is actually the work of government? They even provide their own protection. The VIPs who are paying police to give them VIP protection are not supposed to pay. If Nigeria is secured, VIPs will spend most of those money they waste paying police for VIP protection to other uses. Between 60 to 96, we never had any of this thing called VIP protection. Nigeria was secured because the physical, social, economic, governance, resource control framework was such that the regions operated at their own level. The competition was very rife. The North had the cotton, textile and everything, granite pyramid. The West had cocoa and everything. The East had their coal, they had their limestone, they had their palm oil. We controlled 45% of the global palm oil market then. If we had maintained that trajectory, today Nigeria would be exporting only $38 billion worth of palm oil. But we have abandoned those things because everybody is fixated with the fossil fuel coming from that delta. Nobody is thinking in the public sector. All they are trying to do is grab power, steal, loot, buy dollar, buy houses from Maryland to Dubai, and let the rest suffer and die. It does not make sense.
All right. We have information now that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is on his way to his house, his apartment in Bodilon in celebration of in celebration of Eid al-Kabir. We see that he's just come into the country from London and he's driving to his home in Bodilon. It's reported that the convoy was seen and there's about 120 vehicles. That's the reports that we're getting. It seems that according to the reports that we're getting, it's over a large number of vehicles of the president as he comes into the country, heading to his apartment in Bodilon, Ikoyi, in celebration of Eid al-Kabir. We just finished having a conversation about convoy, right, and the police removing VIPs. There's some Nigerians that have expressed concern as to why the president needs this much convoy or this amount of people going with him. I'd like you to react to that, but also, Mr. Obiariri, I'd want you to react to the president talking about how we should be considerate of the poor. He says that we should remember the less fortunate in celebration of Eid al-Kabir. And one video or one clip that we've seen trending on social media is where he says, let the poor breathe. We have that responsibility. But would you say that, from all indications, the actions they're displaying so far, does it look like they're actually considering the less fortunate? Are they really allowing the poor breathe? Their actions, their utterances is in opposite direction. Their actions do not conform with their utterances. For crying out loud, in 1980, Nigeria had only about 4.1 million people who were under poverty. 1980, China had 769 people under poverty. Between 1980 to 2005, China exited all the poor people within their rank. Today, China has only about 16 million people who are ranked as poor in a population of 1.4 billion. Nigeria here, we've succeeded in moving the number of the poor from 4.1 million to 133 million more dimensional poor. Singapore, the same thing in Singapore, 1965. But you look at what did Singapore and China do? They embrace education. As of 1980, the number of literate people in China was 62%. Today, it's 97.5%. The number of literate people was 57%. Today, it's 98%. Nigeria, illiteracy has continued to grow. We have 20 million kids out of school. If they actually care for the poor, they should start first of all. I believe that any nation that is at the position of Nigeria today must at least make it a law. Budget 50% of our revenues every year to take care of these three overheads. Education, 20%. Health, 20%. Security, 10%. Nothing less than that. Cut cost of governance. Make it compulsory.
Basic education must be free and compulsory. Quality basic education. Any child that is of old enough to be in school, that is not in school, the parents will go to jail without option of fine. Because if you look at the education system between 1960 to 1990, even someone that did only primary 6 can read and write fluently. Today, you will see graduates that cannot even spell their name. That is how low Nigeria has fallen. Therefore, if these guys actually care for the poor, social intervention schemes must be put in. Education, health, and security must consume at least 50% of our budget across the 3 tiers of government. If they care, they should, within the next one, they should legislate, making it so. If we can bring Nigerians' literacy level to 90% over the next 4 years, or over the next 8 years, education has a way of liberating the mind. While I was in university, one of my friends told me, and I can't forget it, he said, quality degree certificate is one of the key to knock on the door of the list. And I saw it because some of us grew up under multi-dimensional poverty. What delivered us was quality education, not just for any degree, education that imbibed knowledge. If we can bring the number of literate level in Nigeria to 90%, which China did, which Singapore did, which Indonesia did, Nigeria will be in a better position to allow the poor to breathe. The poor can only breathe when they have quality learning, education, and the quality learning, education, and the knowledge that can help them to be able to bring themselves. Because when a man is learned and educated, you cannot easily manipulate him.
I'll just quickly mention, before we proceed with the conversation, that of course we've had Mr. Nemeka Obiariri reiterate the importance of our budgets and prioritizing what matters. And of course, this was in reaction to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's statement in terms of considering the less fortunate during the Salah. Also talking about the convoy, we're not quite sure what exactly the number of the convoy. There have been speculations as to the number of vehicles, but this is to mention that we're not quite certain what the number is. But although some Nigerians have expressed displeasure as to the number of vehicles that they've seen going with him, which might of course be a direct result of the discontent that many are experiencing at the moment with the taxes here and there. But over to you, Sergey.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, there's a saying that the more things change, the more they stay the same, and so, Mr. Obiariri, are these the earliest signs for Nigerians to basically just accept that nothing will be different with the current government? Nothing will be different with regards cutting down the cost of governance, with regards investing more in security and investing more in education, investing more in infrastructure and the agricultural sector. Nothing will be different. We basically have just changed government, but it is the same, experience that Nigerians would have, maybe even worse in the next couple of years.
See, what we have seen clearly, their actions, their steps are totally in opposite direction with their beautiful policy pronouncement. In fact, from what I am seeing, from their actions so far, Nigeria will be actually be transiting from the regime of Jeroboam to the regime of Rehoboam. For Bible scholars, they will explain to you. Jeroboam, Israelis were crying that Jeroboam treated them so harshly. They will use whip on them. Jeroboam said to them, I will use scorpion and snakes on you guys. And that wasn't what happened. And that was what led to the breakage of Israel in kingdoms. I pray it does not come so to Nigerians. These guys must come down to reality. The laws of Nigeria must be amended. They must go. See, it's no longer optional for them because things are getting to a head. These guys must go back to the physical regime, to the governance regime that worked for Nigeria between 1960 to 1966. As a matter of fact, the 1999 constitution is a criminal contraption that we must do away with. If there's no need patching it, if the foundation is faulty, you can't continue patching a faulty foundation. We must take Nigeria back to 1966 constitutional physical resource control framework. That is the only thing that can save this country. The way we are going, what we have just have now, or what we have over the last 15 years, are just a bunch of elitist public and private sector bandits lording over the rest of the economy.
Mr. Nemeka Obiariri, thank you so much for joining us this morning for this conversation. We have more conversations coming your way this morning here on Breakfast Central. Well, thank you very much for your time. Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu on Tuesday enjoined Muslims nationwide to imbibe tolerance and patience as the Prophet did, urging them to remember the less fortunate as they celebrate another Eid. In his words, I quote, "As we immerse ourselves in the joy of this moment and celebrate, let us remember those who may not be as fortunate like us," Tinubu said in his maiden Eid al-Kabir message to Nigerians, titled, "We must multiply out good deeds." The president joined Muslims in Nigeria and all over the world to observe Eid al-Kabir.
me. 150, 150, 150. That's 450. I'll buy the 3.
Haggling here between ram sellers and their prospective buyers. It's barely 24 hours before the al-Adha celebration, and the prices have more than doubled. Convincing the buyers is clearly a tough job.
One of the prominent features of the al-Adha celebration is the slaughtering of ram, where Muslim faithfuls are enjoined to slaughter a ram as a means of sacrifice. But unfortunately, not every Muslim will be slaughtering a ram this year, and they say this is because of the prices of ram, which has more than doubled.
He refused 450 for 3. That's an average of 150,000 naira per. He refused. He's calling me 800,000 for the 3, which is an average of almost. He asked for 900, which is 300, 300, 300.
One of the factors affecting the hike in price can be attributed to the subsidy removal, which forced the cost of transportation to shoot up, affecting the price of commodities. Even the sellers are not having it easy.
Before, trailer can take around 700,000, 800,000. Now is going to 1.8, 1.6.
Owó ni owó tán fi sórí epo, so ẹran ti lọ sókè táwọn èèyàn bá ti débi tán bá sọ pé àwọn ò wá jẹ ẹran ní 200,000 lọ tá a fi hàn wọ́n wá wò pé irú eléyìí làwọn rà ní 100,000 ní last year àìtárú àwọn eléyìí 100, 110 ẹ wò ó nísìnyí 190, 180 ní jálẹ̀.
Èló ni màálù èrè ìbàdàn?
1.2.
1.2 million kò jálẹ̀
Ó ṣe ná last year.
Passengers traveling to different parts of the country to celebrate with families in their respective hometowns are also not having it easy, as the price of transportation have increased by more than 200% due to the increase in the price of fuel.
3,000 làwọn. Bọ́ǹsì Adébí báyìí ó di 8,000. A mọ̀ pé nígbà tó fi máa da lẹ́sìn, àwọn tó túnbọ̀ 10,000 náà máa wọ̀. Kó jọ.
I'm going to Kogi State, Okene. He used to enter it 7,000 naira. And now all of a sudden it just to 13,000, 12,000 naira. It's not easy.
Go come ìlú wa tá à ń lọ báyìí sìn. Lọ́sùn State wá sí kò sìn 50,000 naira lè kó tá máa lò go come.
The al-Adha festival falls at the end of the annual Islamic pilgrimage to Hajj to commemorate the Quranic tale of Prophet Ibrahim's willingness to sacrifice his son Ismail as an act of obedience to God. The festival is celebrated with the slaughter of livestock, commonly rams and cows, and shared with family, friends, and for charity. Adeshewa Odushoga reporting for News Central.
Oh, and of course, there's no break for Central without entertainment. Let's begin in West Africa, where Nollywood actress Ini Edo has opened up about her personal life in a recent interview with Chudi. The veteran actress has faced the harsh opinions of critics over the years in the industry. The 41-year-old star talked about her marriage, of course, her ex-marriage with her ex-husband, surrogacy, and how she's handled negativity and the critics. Let's watch this.
I had a couple of miscarriages, you know, and I just got tired of trying. And I didn't want to try. I don't have a husband, so I'm like, I want a child for myself, whether I have a husband or not. All the magazines that had come out that week had my picture on it, on the front cover, with different captions. And I remember just blanking out. My hands were literally shaking. I had tears like my eyes, so I had to just pull out of the road. That's how bad it was.
Yeah.
So I told my story, irrespective of how anybody else was going to feel, because this is my life. It's not your life. I do me. Do yours.
Now, of course, after several awards, having played in over 100 films till date, Iniedo has also given some advice on how to deal with the negativity from others. She says, and I quote, "You live this life for yourself. They're just venting their frustrations on you." She even added that if you care enough for yourself, that's enough. Now let's move from that one to Southern Africa, where Amapiano star Focalistic is in the news. He dropped an online docu-series on his globe-trotting experiences as one of Africa's biggest stars. Now the South African star, popularly known as President of the Streets, called the series Strata K Strategy, Episode 1. Let's watch what this is about. Now, whether it was for hit collaborations with Davido, the 27-year-old has been making waves not just in South Africa, but all across the globe. And fans are definitely excited to see a glimpse of his stardom or superstar lifestyle. Whether he's on the road, International Fashion Week, luxury stores, whatever it is, fans always want to know. In fact, we hear that his next episode will be at Afro Nation, Portugal, his trip there, and of course a performance. And that one's rather interesting. Now, there's also some more news in South Africa where fans of American rapper Kendrick Lamar are now crying out over the ticket prices of his show. Initially, fans were super excited about Kendrick Lamar's upcoming performance in South Africa until Hey Neighbor Festival announced that the prices will start from about 3,899 South African rands to 4,999, which is about 5,000. Approximately Naira, we're talking about 160,000 Naira. And this will be Lamar's second time performing in South Africa, following his March 2014 Three Cities live concert in Cape Town, Durban, and Johannesburg. I would have loved to take some of the tweets, but if you've been on socials, you definitely see the tweets passing by. This person here says, "Me at the Kendrick Lamar concert because I couldn't afford the tickets." Now that person, of course, planned to watch it from home. Someone else, of course, advised many Kendrick Lamar fans and other people to go ahead and see the show, come for the festival, because they always complain that they don't get A-list, of course, musicians performing. Well, finally, on the international scene, multi-award winning star Cardi B has clapped back at her husband Offset over his cheating allegations. I know, sounds like every other time there's some cheating allegation. But in a now deleted Instagram post, the Migos rapper accused his wife of being unfaithful. Now, the WAP singer Cardi B hosted a Twitter space to clear the air of Kesha Cole's "I should have cheated." She then went on a long tirade denying the accusations. Now, recall, Offset and Cardi B got married at a secret wedding in 2017, and 3 months later, there was some scandal, some text tape that leaked, and he has reportedly cheated on her at least twice, leading to Cardi B filing for a divorce before they came back together. We know the drama. Well, we all love them, of course, for different reasons, but at the same time, fans now, we like to see cute things and love play out. Speaking about, these allegations, over the past hours, we saw that Twitter online, Davido and the Anita thing. I don't know. Olive, you definitely heard about it, didn't you?
Of course, everyone's been talking about the claims, and she sent a lot of evidence, quote unquote.
That could be doctored. I'm not saying they are, but in a time of artificial intelligence.
Exactly, with the deep fakes where people can recreate videos and photos. I don't know, I would hope that he would address this.
Right.
He and Chioma have been through so much.
They have.
And I'm hoping that he would address this and tell us that it's a lie. I really don't want for it to be true.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. But so much has happened in the entertainment scene. Congratulations to Iniedo. I like that interview has highlighted conversations about surrogacy and why it's important that there are alternative means of having children. Even though some people don't agree with this, it's going to spark another debate. People will talk about IVF, surrogacy, and adoption. But I think that these conversations should be explored even more in these days. That's why science is making so much progress.
I agree. I mean, she's an adult plus, and she's entitled to her body and her rights. So, people.
Thank you so much, Sam Danny, for bringing entertainment.
Thank you for having me.
All right, this is where we wrap it up here on Breakfast Central, but we want to share with you what's happening later today on News Central. At 11 a.m. West African Time, Business Edge. At 4:30 p.m. West African Time, East Central. Politics HQ comes your way at 7 p.m. West African Time. Join us. Thank you for joining us today from wherever in the world you are watching Breakfast Central. It's been an absolute fantastic 2 hours of bringing some of the biggest stories around the continent. And we do this every weekday from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. So join us tomorrow as we continue this conversation. On behalf of Osalge, myself, Sam Dandy, and the rest of the team, we say thank you and see you tomorrow. I am Oliver Modi. Have a good Salah celebration. And if you have meat, send some our way.
Our youth are the most important national asset that we have.
Did you hear the stories of Africans who fought for their independence, bringing a wave of 30 free countries in just 10 years? Did you hear of the heroes who fought battles that are just like